Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name's Han and I'm a hand embroidery artist. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you a super beginner friendly hand embroidery tutorial on this Kanken backpack. If you're not familiar with this brand, Fjällräven Kanken is a Swedish outdoor apparel company and they make the cutest backpacks. This one is a mini Kanken, but they go all the way up to extra large and they are the perfect school bags, book bags, and they also take embroidery super well. Alright, I'm gonna jump right into the supplies that you're gonna need to complete this project for yourself at home. As always, these supplies will all be linked in the description of this video just to make it super easy for you to grab them if you do want to complete this project on your own. So firstly, we're going to need some embroidery needles. I always say this in all of my videos, you do not need to get the brand name embroidery needles. I actually prefer the non-brand name a lot of the time. I think it's much better value for the money that you pay for them. And I'll say this again and again, all embroidery needles are pretty similar. So just get the cheaper ones if you are wondering which ones to get for yourself. Next up, you're going to need some scissors. I like to use smaller, sharper scissors than, let's say, like kitchen scissors. Small scissors just make it much easier for you to get closer to the site where you need to cut off excess thread and such. So I definitely invest in some small sharp scissors like these. Next up, I do recommend using some kind of finger protectors since the material for these backpacks is a little bit thicker than your regular embroidery material like cotton or linen. These finger protectors are not only going to protect the skin on your fingertips, they're also going to make it much easier for you to grip the needle when you're sticking it through the fabric and then pulling it up through. Just going to make your life much easier if you are doing this project at home. Then next up, you are going to need some embroidery thread. I like to store my thread on these clothes pegs. I think some people also call them clothes pins. Just makes it super easy to keep your thread neat and tidy, and you can also write the number of the thread onto the clothes pin. A lot of threads like DMC and all of the threads that I have linked in the description of this video, they use a color key, which basically just makes it really easy for you to locate a specific color. For this project, we're just going to be using a white thread and a yellow thread. I told you this project is super easy, super simple. Next up, for this project, I recommend using a really fine lined pencil. We'll be going in onto the backpack and just making some really tiny markings. So you don't necessarily need an erasable embroidery marker for this. Here, we just basically need to make tiny markers on the backpack, and for that you can use a really nice sharp fine lined pencil. And then lastly, we are going to be obviously needing a backpack to embroider. I had this mini green Kanken on hand. I have actually embroidered onto this Kanken before, and you might be able to see, I'm not sure if the camera is picking it up, but I have some little embroidery marks from where I have embroidered on this little guy before. I didn't really love how it turned out, so I just picked those stitches out. So first up, let's prep the backpack. Just unzip her and get it ready for embroidery. We're obviously going to need access to the inside of the backpack, and then take that really sharp pencil and go around the circular logo and mark out a few really tiny circles. Firstly, start at the north, east, south, and west points, and then make some little circles in between those points. In total, that should equal 8 little circles around the circular logo. And then for a little extra pizzazz, I went and added 3 more little circles on the front pocket. These circles are going to signify the center of our daisies. And now we're going to go in and prepare our thread for embroidery. We're going to be starting with this white thread, and this is why I love using the clothes pins. Just comes off so easily. Now all embroidery thread comes in a skein of 6 tiny little threads bunched together to make one thread. For really dainty, neat stitches, you have to separate this thread into smaller thread counts. So for this project, we're going to be using 3 strands of the white thread for all of the stitches with the white thread, and then we're going to be using 2 strands of thread when we switch over to the yellow thread. I'll remind you of this too. If you're struggling to thread your needle, a lot of needle packs come with those little helpers to help you get the thread into the eye of the needle. Then pop your finger protectors on and remember to knot the bottom of your thread twice to make sure it doesn't come through the fabric once you make your first stitch. So we're going to start with the daisy at the very top of the backpack, at the top of the logo. And for these daisy petals, we're going to be using the lazy daisy stitch. To start off a lazy daisy stitch, stick your needle up through the fabric at the top of the little circle that we made. Stick it back down through the fabric, super close to where you first brought it up through the fabric, and don't pull that thread completely taut. Leave a little bit of excess thread on the surface of the backpack. Then bring your needle back up through the fabric at the top of where you would like your petal to be, and thread that needle through the excess thread that you left on top of the backpack surface. Now you can pull this thread more taut, and then we're going to make an anchor stitch back into the backpack, and then we're going to repeat this for the remaining 4 petals on this daisy. My best tip for embroidering really cute lazy daisy stitches is to make sure you don't anchor them too tightly. These stitches are supposed to be a little bit 3D, they're supposed to be a little bit puffy because they're petals, right? You don't want to pull them too tight, otherwise the petal shape isn't going to be as pronounced, so just be really gentle with these when you are stitching them. Once you're finished with all of the lazy daisy petals on this flower, you're going to go back in and we're going to do some straight stitches to fill these lazy daisy stitches. This is super simple. You're just going to start at either the top or the bottom of one of the petals, and you're going to bring your needle up through the fabric of the backpack and down through the fabric at the opposite end of the petal. This is just going to fill the petal up, make it look less hollow and more like a full petal. It is sometimes a little hard to get the needle through this fabric. Like I said, these backpacks are made of slightly thicker fabric than what we would usually embroider onto, like cotton or muslin, linen fabric. So don't worry if you have to wrestle with your needle and thread a little bit. Now, if you do run out of thread while you're stitching these daisies and you need to tie off the thread that you're currently using so that you can rethread your needle with more thread, just loop your needle into some of the inner stitches on the inside of the backpack 2 or 3 times, and then do that 2 or 3 times more. But when you make those loops, make some knots in those loops. This is going to make sure your thread is super secure and it's not going to go anywhere. I'm going to show you the lazy daisy process one more time on this last daisy that I have, just to make sure it is super clear and easy to follow. I try and get the best angles for these tutorials, but I am super short-sighted, so usually when I embroider I have the item that I'm embroidering really close to my face. Obviously I can't do that when I'm filming, so I try and make sure you guys can see the embroidery, see the process as easily as possible. So the last stitch that we have to do for this design is a French knot stitch. It really creates the best effect for the inside of a flower, in my opinion. For the French knots in the center of these daisies, we're going to be pulling the needle up through the center of the daisy. Again, remember, we're only using 2 strands of this yellow thread. We're going to wrap our needle around the excess thread twice before sticking the needle back into the center of the daisy. You can keep your thumb on the excess thread as the needle travels back down through the fabric. This is going to make sure your French knot is really neat and tidy. French knots are not the easiest to film, since I usually move the backpack or the shoes, whatever I'm working on. I usually move it around quite a lot to make sure I can get the perfect French knots, but I'm trying to film it the best I can for you guys. Basically, the essential things to remember for these French knots in the center of these daisies is that we are wrapping the thread around the needle twice, and I always do recommend keeping your thumb on the excess thread. As I mentioned before, it really does make a difference in how neat and tight the French knot turns out. And once you're done with the very last French knot, you are done with this design. You could go in and add some little bumblebees or some other little flowers, but I think it looks just perfect the way it is, especially the white daisies on this green backpack. They look like they're sitting on a little meadow of grass. I think this design is super cute, and it was achieved with only 3 different kinds of stitches, and it took me around 45 minutes to complete the entire backpack, and it's definitely given me the bug to want to embroider more backpacks, so I think I'll be making some orders on the Kanken website this week. I really hope you found this tutorial helpful, and that maybe you will consider embroidering your own backpack, especially with summer right around the corner. These backpacks are the perfect accessory for a summer picnic or a trip to the library. If you did enjoy this video, I would so appreciate it if you would leave me a like, perhaps leave me a comment and let me know what other tutorials you would like me to film. If you'd like to see more embroidery tutorials and small business related content, I definitely consider subscribing to this channel. I try and put out a couple of videos a week, and I have some really exciting things coming over the next couple of months, and you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much again for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.